The ancient city, St. Augustine, is the oldest city in the United States and founded by Don Pedro de Aviles of Spain in 1585. Each year, visitors come to explore the more than 4 centuries of history, exquisite architecture, beautiful natural scenery, and pristine Atlantic coast beaches. And among those visitors are those with an affinity for apparitions and the paranormal, because inside the walls of the historic buildings, along the cobblestone streets, and lingering among the people, there are many spirits of those who have lived and died here, those who have chosen never to leave. Here are the most haunted places in St. Augustine that lure ghost hunters in every day. The Castillo de San Marcos is the largest masonry structure of its kind in the USA. The magnificent 17th century fort stands as it has for many centuries, guarding the coast against invasion and surviving more than 300 years of battles and storms. It's here that many supernatural enthusiasts flock to investigate the accounts of inexplainable events. Within one of the watchtowers, there have been reports of a light shining from a fixture that has no electricity running to it. Other spooky occurrences include the sighting of a Spanish soldier standing at the edge of a fort looking out to sea just when the sun is about to rise or set. In the dungeon, many people say they have felt someone with cold hands was touching them. Others felt queasy and cold while walking through. It's also not uncommon for visitors that have shot videos and taken pictures while taking a tour to report the appearance of a misty shape, glowing orbs, and even see-through shape of a person. The old city gate's pillars stand confidently at the entrance to this ancient city. The rough and weathered stone appears soft in the quiet glimmer of night. Will I see little Elizabeth in her lacy white dress there waiting for me? She frolics and dances where her fever-stricken body was found, disclosing the direction of the Huguenot cemetery, her ultimate and final resting place. The straw that broke the camel's back, nearly 150 years old at that time, the city of St. Augustine was at their wits' end. The decision was made to fortify her outer rims, subsequent to a British attack in 1702 where Governor James Moore and his ardent English force pillaged and ransacked the homes of St. Augustine's residents. Moore, like all others before him, was unable to conquer the impenetrable Castillo de San Marcos, but he was able to completely devastate the heart of the city by crushing the spirit of the townspeople. With its fortification, the ancient city itself would be surrounded by its own impenetrable walls. Little Elizabeth was an adolescent girl whom succumbed to the cruel yellow fever epidemic of 1821 and was among the hundreds buried in unmarked graves across the street from the old city gates at Huguenot Cemetery. Her body went unclaimed and was left at the columns to be found by officials. At the time, if you or your family were believed to have yellow fever, your home and belongings were burnt to the ground in order to keep the disease from spreading. Did poor Elizabeth's family leave her body at the old city gates for fear of losing their home and prized possessions? Was Elizabeth an orphan girl who fell to her knees in sickness and died at the entrance to her beloved St. Augustine? We may never know, but we do know that Elizabeth in her lacy white dress have been seen dancing and frolicking at the Coquina columns. Won't you say hello to Elizabeth as you enter the heart of the colonial city? The Huguenot Cemetery opened in 1821 to offer a final resting place to those who were of other faiths, since the nearby Tolomado Cemetery was reserved for Catholics only. In the beginning, many of the deceased laid to rest were victims of the yellow fever epidemic that swept through the city. The ancient burial ground is believed to hold approximately 436 bodies and was open for burials until 1884. Today, it is home to a variety of ghosts who've been spotted by visitors at all times of the day and night. The most famous ghost is the spirit of Judge John B. Stickney, who is well liked in St. Augustine and known for offering free legal advice and services to his neighbors. After passing away from yellow fever, the Honorable Judge was buried in 1882 and remained there until his grown children decided to relocate him north to be closer to the family. During his exhuming, it is said that thieves stole the judge's gold teeth from his mouth and other valuables he'd been buried with. It's this unfortunate event that many feel is the cause of Judge's unhappy spirit that still resides within this cemetery. He's been seen sitting in a tree and roaming the grounds. The judge isn't here alone. There are several other spirits that have chosen to haunt the cemetery, including one of a young girl who also died from yellow fever. The oldest inn in St. Augustine, built in 1791, the St. Francis Inn has had its share of ghost sightings and stories. One particular story goes back to the fate of two star-crossed lovers, a slave girl beaten savagely for her affair, and her lover, the nephew of the then manager, who committed suicide upon learning of her death. Since that time, many guests have reported unnatural phenomena that include male and female apparitions, guests waking up under the bed, ghostly hands on bedposts, and pictures and personal property being moved about the room. Then we have Casa de Sueños. This may be the spookiest bed and breakfast in St. Augustine. Quite possibly the reason is before it was converted into a bed and breakfast, it catered to a different clientele, the dead. As it was a successful funeral home, guests have reported seeing apparitions, and some have had objects move about in their rooms. Of course, if this kind of nighttime activity interests you, be our guest. When you enter the Spanish Military Hospital, a historical building, don't be alarmed by the unnerving sensation you feel, as if a sad, heavy presence is surrounding you. This feeling has been experienced by many who enter into the hospital, which was rebuilt in 1821 when the city had to replace the water lines that ran under the building. When construction began, workers discovered thousands of human bones buried underneath the hospital. After some investigating, they learned that the hospital sat on a Timucuan burial ground, the Indians that were native to St. Augustine in its earliest years. Whether the presence people felt was that of the spirits of these lost souls is unknown, but hauntings in the building still occur to this day. Moans, screams, cries, misty sightings of patients in hospital gowns, and the outline of a body laying on the bed when no one was there are just a few of the accounts. These are just a handful of examples of the haunted locations that lie within the walls of St. Augustine, Florida. We invite you this evening to do a deep dive into the lesser-known locations. We hope that you enjoyed this content. Now let's get into it.